The assembly hall stretched for nearly a kilometer in every direction, its crystalline walls reflecting the light of 1,000 worlds. Representatives from 247 species filled the chamber, their voices creating a cacophony of clicks, whistles, and electronic translations. At the center of it all stood Ambassador Hiram, her dark eyes scanning the hostile crowd with practiced calm. She had known this day would come. For 30 years, humanity had tried to earn respect among the stars. For 30 years, they had been treated like children who had stumbled into an adult conversation. The Galactic Concordat had made its position clear from the beginning. Humans were newcomers. Primitives, who had barely left their home system when most species here had been crossing the galaxy for millennia. High Chancellor Vexter rose from his throne, his forearms spreading wide in a gesture of false magnanimity. The Veltheran leader stood 3 meters tall, his scaled skin shimmering with bioluminescent patterns that signaled his pleasure. "The Council recognizes the human delegation," he announced, his voice booming through the chamber. "We trust you have considered our generous offer."
How generous?
The word tasted like poison. Hiram glanced at the datapad in her hand, reviewing the ultimatum one final time. Surrender all military vessels. Accept permanent oversight of human colonies. Allow Concordat inspectors unrestricted access to Earth itself. Submit to a classification as a developing species. With no voting rights for the next 500 years, Captain Dae Jung stood beside her, his military uniform crisp and his expression unreadable. He had commanded humanity's defense fleet for a decade, watching as Concordat species stole human technology, undermined human trade agreements, and blocked every attempt at equal partnership. His hand rested near his sidearm, though he knew it would be useless here. They were surrounded by thousands of aliens, many of whom would celebrate if humanity simply disappeared, Ambassador. Vexter's tone carried a hint of impatience. "Your response?" Hiram stepped forward, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. She touched the communication device at her collar, ensuring her words would be translated into every language in the chamber. "The United Human Government has carefully considered the Concordat's ultimatum," she began, her voice steady. "After extensive deliberation with our leaders, scientists, and citizens, we have reached a unanimous decision." The chamber waited. Vexter's bioluminescence flickered with anticipation. He expected capitulation. They all did. "Humanity rejects your terms entirely," Hiram said. "Furthermore, effective immediately, the United Human Government withdraws from the Galactic Concordat. All human vessels, colonies, and citizens will evacuate Concordat space within 6 standard months. We will retreat beyond the Perseus Arm boundary and sever all diplomatic, economic, and military ties with member species." For 3 heartbeats, the chamber remained silent. Then it erupted. Laughter, not the nervous laughter of uncertainty, but the deep, mocking laughter of species who believed they had just witnessed an elaborate joke. Tribunal Master Colvex, a reptilian creature whose species had ruled the stars for 20,000 years, slapped his tail against the floor in amusement. "The primitives think they can survive alone," he hissed. "This is better than I hoped." Trade Overseer Nimra, her insectoid features clicking with delight, joined in. "Let them go. We will save resources no longer wasted on these upstarts." Vexter raised his arms for silence, though his own chest rumbled with suppressed laughter. "Ambassador Hiram, surely you understand what you are saying. Your species has no independent trade network. Your technology is centuries behind ours. Your colonies depend on Concordat supply chains. Without our protection, you will be vulnerable to pirates, raiders, and hostile species. You will come crawling back within a year, begging for readmission." Hiram did not smile. She did not argue. She simply nodded. "That is your assessment, Chancellor. We respectfully disagree." "Respectfully." Vexer's laughter boomed across the chamber. "There is nothing respectful about this farce. You cannot even defend your own shipping lanes without our patrol fleets. You have no allies, no resources, no hope of survival. This is a tantrum, nothing more." Captain Dae Jung stepped forward then, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "The Concordat should pray we never have reason to return." The laughter intensified. Several delegates openly jeered. A slug-like ambassador from the Gelmoth Collective produced a sound that translators rendered as adorable threats from baby species. Hiram raised her hand, and a holographic display appeared above her, showing a detailed timeline of humanity's withdrawal. All human facilities will be evacuated in sequence, she explained, though few were listening. We will depart peacefully and request that Concordat vessels maintain a distance of 10 light-years from our evacuation routes. After 6 months, the Perseus Arm boundary will be designated as restricted space. Any alien vessel crossing that boundary will be considered hostile. Vexler waved dismissively. Yes, yes, make your empty declarations. When your people are starving and your colonies are dying, when pirates plunder your worlds and you have nowhere to turn, remember this moment. Remember that it was your pride that destroyed you. Dejong's jaw tightened, but he said nothing more. Hiram gathered her materials, her movements deliberate and unhurried. As she turned to leave, Vexler called out one final time. I will leave your seat empty, Ambassador. For when you return to beg forgiveness, I want you to remember where you stood on this day. The human delegation walked through the gauntlet of jeering aliens, their heads held high. Behind them, the Concordat celebrated. They had removed an irritant, a species that had dared to demand equality despite having nothing to offer. Good riddance to the humans and their absurd ambitions. In the shuttle back to the human diplomatic station, Hiram finally allowed herself to relax. Dae-Jung sat across from her, his expression grim. They have no idea what they have done, he said quietly. Hiram agreed. They believe we are running away in defeat. They do not understand that we are simply removing our chains. The withdrawal will be difficult, Dae-Jung continued, moving millions of people across hundreds of light years, while hostile species watch and wait for us to fail. It will take every resource we have. Hiram looked out the viewport at the glittering station that represented humanity's presence in Concordat space. Soon it would be empty. Soon, all of it would be empty. The Council sees us as weak because we joined their system and played by their rules. They do not know what humans can do when we write our own rules. Dae-Jung nodded slowly. And when they find out? Then, Hiram said, her eyes reflecting the distant stars, it will be too late for them to matter. Admiral Taewon stood on the bridge of the carrier in Chandon, watching as the last transport shuttle docked with the massive vessel. 6 months. The Concordat had given humanity 6 months to abandon everything they had built over 3 decades. Humanity had done it in 5. The aliens had expected chaos and desperation. Instead, they witnessed the most organized evacuation in galactic history. That is the final shuttle from Station Busan, Admiral, reported the communications officer. All personnel accounted for. No one left behind. Taewon allowed himself a small smile. Excellent. Signal the engineering teams. I want every database wiped, every system dismantled. Leave them the shell, but nothing more. Throughout Concordat space, the same scene played out on 100 human colonies. Massive transport ships, some hastily constructed in the months since the announcement, carried millions of humans back toward Earth and the growing cluster of independent human worlds beyond the Perseus Arm. But the evacuation was more than just a retreat. It was a complete erasure of human presence. On New Seoul Station, Governor Kung-hae walked through empty corridors that had once bustled with 30,000 people. The hydroponics bays had been stripped down to bare framework. The residential sections stood vacant, their furniture and equipment already loaded onto cargo haulers. Even the artwork had been removed from the walls, leaving only the ghosts of what had been. Governor. The demolition teams are requesting final authorization, her aide said. Holding out a datapad, Kung-hee hesitated. New Seoul had been her home for 15 years. She had watched it grow from a mining outpost to a thriving community. Human engineers had designed it. Human workers had built it. Human families had made it live. And now, rather than leave it for the Concordat to claim, they would reduce it to an empty skeleton. Authorized, she said firmly. Tear out everything? Power cores, computer systems, even the atmospheric processors. If they want this station, they can rebuild it from scratch. The demolition had a purpose beyond spite. Human technology had quietly become superior to Concordat standards in many areas. Humanity's fusion reactors were more efficient, their computer systems more sophisticated, their medical equipment more advanced. The aliens had dismissed these improvements as lucky accidents or stolen technology. They had no idea that human innovation, even under Concordat restrictions, had been steadily outpacing their own. Dr. Boyoung supervised the evacuation of humanity's largest research facility, a massive orbital laboratory that had been conducting experiments in quantum mechanics, genetic engineering, and exotic physics. Concordat observers had repeatedly demanded access to human research, citing collaboration agreements that had always favored alien interests. Boyoung had spent years watching her discoveries stolen, her patents overruled, her breakthroughs credited to alien scientists who had contributed nothing. The prototype antimatter containment system, she asked her assistant, loaded onto the Daegu scientific doctor, along with all experimental data, and the quantum computer array, dismantled and packed. Nothing remains. A Concordat official, a crystalline being named Thelkos, approached with obvious agitation. Dr. Boyoung, you cannot remove that equipment. Those systems were built with Concordat resources. Boyoung turned to face him, her expression cold. Show me the documentation. Show me where the Concordat provided funding, materials, or expertise for any project in this facility.
Thelkos hesitated.
The truth was that humans had funded everything themselves. But Concordat law had required shared access to all research conducted in Concordat space, a law that had never applied in reverse. The research belongs to the galactic community, Thelkos insisted. The research belongs to humanity, Boyoung corrected. We conducted it. We funded it. We own it. And we are taking it with us. She walked away, leaving the official sputtering behind her. Within hours, the research station was nothing but an empty framework floating in space. Every discovery, every prototype, every bit of data was gone. The economic impact hit the Concordat faster than anyone had predicted. Captain Ji Woo, piloting her freighter Gwangju Trader, made her final cargo run through Concordat space. She had spent 20 years hauling goods between human and alien worlds, building relationships with dozens of species. Now those species were panicking. Captain, please. The Torvalian merchant transmitted. We have a contract for the next 5 years. You cannot simply abandon it. Guwu checked her navigation plot. 3 more stops, then she would cross the Perseus arm boundary and never return. Our contract was with the Concordat, which we are no longer part of. You will need to find another carrier. There is no other carrier, the Torvalian wailed. Human ships handle 60% of the cargo in this sector. The Concordat fleet refuses to carry commercial goods, and the independent haulers charge triple our budget. This was the hidden truth the Concordat had not recognized. Humans had not just participated in the galactic economy. They had become essential to it. Human freighter captains were reliable and honest. Human engineers fixed things that alien specialists declared impossible. Human technicians kept stations running that should have failed years ago. And now, in a matter of months, all of that expertise was simply leaving. On the mining colony of Jeju 7, the final transport lifted off, carrying the last 300 human miners. They left behind excavation equipment worth millions, but every processor and refinery went with them. The Volmec Corporation, which had profited enormously from human mining efficiency, suddenly found themselves with, or they could not process, an equipment. They did not know how to operate. Throughout Concordat space, the pattern repeated. Humans did not just leave. They took their knowledge, their skills, and their innovation with them. They left behind empty buildings and useless equipment. The aliens had thought humans were dependent on them. Too late, they realized the dependency had been mutual. Governor Kyung, he was the last administrator to depart. She stood at the viewport of her transport, watching New Seoul Station recede into the distance. The lights were going out section by section as automated systems shut down. Soon it would be dark and cold, a monument to what the Concordat had thrown away. Any regrets, Governor? Her aide asked. Hyung-dash, He thought about the friends she had made, the relationships she had built. She thought about the dreams of cooperation and shared progress. Then she thought about the contempt in Vextheres' voice, the laughter in the assembly hall, the years of being treated as lesser. She said, no regrets at all. The Perseus Arm boundary had become the most heavily defended border in known space, though no one in the Concordat knew exactly how heavily defended it was. Lieutenant Yunsu guided her stealth corvette through the perimeter, its hull absorbing sensor scans rather than reflecting them. Behind her, the automated defense platforms hummed with patient vigilance, waiting for any alien vessel foolish enough to cross the line. Another spy drone, Lieutenant, her sensor officer reported. Concordat design, trying to piggyback on a gravitational wave. Yunsu smiled. The aliens were getting creative, but human technology had leaped forward in ways they could not imagine. Capture it. Add it to the collection. The Corvette's tractor beam, operating on principles the Concordat still considered theoretical, plucked the drone from space like a child catching a butterfly. It would be studied, reverse-engineered, and its intelligence data would tell humanity exactly what the aliens knew, which was almost nothing. 2 years had passed since the withdrawal. 2 years since humanity had vanished behind a wall of silence. The Concordat had expected humans to come crawling back within months. Instead, they got nothing. No communication. No trade requests. No diplomatic overtures. Just an impenetrable boundary and a single repeated warning. Approach and be destroyed. Fleet Marshal. Songwoo reviewed the reports in his office aboard the orbital command station above. Earth, the transformation of human military capability in just 2 years was staggering. Free from Concordat oversight, free from technology theft, free from artificial limitations. Humanity had unleashed an innovation boom that would have seemed impossible before the withdrawal. Marshal, the shipyards are reporting ahead of schedule again, his aide said, displaying holographic production figures. We now have 240 capital ships completed, with another 100 in final assembly. Before the withdrawal, humanity had possessed 30 aging destroyers and a handful of carriers. The Concordat had limited human military expansion, claiming it was for galactic stability. Now, without those restrictions, human shipyards worked around the clock, producing vessels that would make Concordat admirals weep. Chief Engineer Young Mi stood in the massive construction bay, watching as the latest battleship took shape. The vessel dwarfed anything humanity had built before. Its hull was composed of metamaterials that could shift between solid armor and energy-dispersing configurations. Its drives used a revolutionary gravity manipulation system that made traditional fusion engines look like steam power. And its weapons, she smiled at the thought of the weapons. The dark matter lance is ready for installation, her assistant reported. Final tests showed a 98% efficiency rate. Youngmi nodded. Dark matter weaponry had been purely theoretical when humans lived under Concordat rules. Now it was reality. A single lance could tear through shields that would stop conventional weapons. A full broadside could vaporize ships the size of space stations. The Concordat had laughed at humanity's departure. They would not laugh if they ever saw these ships in action. In a classified research facility hidden within an asteroid field, Dr. Changmin directed experiments that would have been banned under Concordat law. Not because they were dangerous, but because they were too advanced. The Concordat maintained its power through technological superiority, and they actively suppressed innovations that might threaten that advantage. The quantum entanglement communication array is operational, Changmin announced to his team. We now have instantaneous communication across our entire territory with 0 light speed delay. This alone was revolutionary. Concordat communications still relied on relay stations and suffered from transmission lag. Human ships could now coordinate in real time across hundreds of light years. But that was only the beginning. And the stellar destabilization weapon? He asked his chief physicist. The physicist, a young woman named Sujin, pulled up simulation data. Functional. We can trigger solar instability in any main sequence star. The effect would take between 3 and 8 hours to reach critical mass. Evacuation would be impossible. Changmin felt a chill despite himself. This was a weapon that could destroy entire solar systems. They had built it not for conquest, but as insurance. If the Concordat ever decided to invade human space, they needed to know that humanity could retaliate in ways that would make victory meaningless. "Keep it classified at the highest level," he said quietly. "Only the Marshal and the Prime Minister need to know it exists." The AI integration project represented another leap forward. Concordat species had strict limitations on artificial intelligence, fearing it would rebel or replace organic life. Humanity had no such fears. Working in partnership with AI systems of unprecedented sophistication, human researchers had created a hybrid command network that could process battlefield data and execute tactical decisions faster than any organic mind. Lieutenant Yoon Soo saw this in action during border patrols. Her corvette's AI partner, which she had nicknamed Viper, could predict hostile movements before they happened, calculate optimal firing solutions instantaneously, and coordinate with other ships in ways that approach telepathy. "Viper, analysis of that captured drone's data?" she asked. The AI's response was immediate. "The Concordat believes we possess approximately 70 military vessels of pre-withdrawal design. They estimate our industrial capacity at 40% of actual output. They have no knowledge of our new drive systems, weapons, technology, or defensive capabilities." Assessment: the Concordat remains entirely ignorant of human military strength. Perfect. Song-woo had been explicit in his orders. Let the aliens underestimate them. Let them believe humanity was hiding in fear, struggling to survive. The truth would only be revealed if it became absolutely necessary. But there were concerning reports as well. Concordat space was showing signs of instability. Trade networks that had relied on human participation were collapsing. Economic disputes between member species were escalating. And there were rumors of something else, something moving through the outer regions of Concordat territory.
"Marshal,
"We are detecting unusual signals from the southern Concordat border," the intelligence officer reported. "Mass disappearances of colonies. Entire worlds going silent." Song-woo frowned. "Pirates? Unknown, sir? But the pattern is concerning. Whatever it is moving fast and leaving nothing behind." Song-woo filed the information away. It was not humanity's problem. The Concordat had made their choice. Whatever happened in their space was their concern. And yet, as he looked at the reports, at the maps showing human territory expanding, at the projections of military strength that would soon make humanity the most powerful force in this region of the galaxy, he wondered if isolation could truly last. The universe had a way of forcing issues, creating situations where neutrality was not an option. For now, though, humanity would watch and wait. Behind their impenetrable border, they grew stronger with each passing day. The first reports from the southern Concordat border seemed impossible. 17 colonies gone in 3 weeks. Not conquered. Not evacuated. Simply erased. Every trace of life consumed as if it had never existed. High Chancellor Vexter read the reports with growing dread, his bioluminescent patterns flickering with patterns that signaled fear. "How many casualties?" he asked War Master Kralvox, massive crustacean whose species had fought 1,000 wars across 10,000 years. Kralvox's mandibles clicked with agitation. "Estimates exceed 4 trillion. But Chancellor, we do not have bodies. We have nothing. The worlds are stripped clean. Atmosphere, oceans, all biomass gone. Only bare rock remains." The thing they called the Devourer Swarm had entered Concordat space like a plague. Initial scouting reports described a fleet of biological ships, each the size of a city, moving in perfect coordination. They descended on inhabited worlds and consumed everything living. Plants, animals. People all became fuel for the swarm's endless hunger. Vexter had ordered the military response he thought would be overwhelming. 3 full battle fleets, comprising over 5,000 ships, engaged the swarm at the Kelthra system. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Concordat had lost 80% of its forces, and the swarm had adapted to every weapon used against it. "Impossible," Kralvox had said, reviewing the battle recordings. "They evolved countermeasures in real time. Shields that reflected our energy weapons, hull plating that absorbed our kinetic strikes, jamming systems that appeared after we used electronic warfare. This enemy learns faster than we can adapt. Now, 3 years after humanity's departure, the Concordat faced extinction. World after world fell to the swarm. Refugee fleets choked the space lanes, carrying billions of displaced people with nowhere safe to go. The economy had collapsed entirely. Member species were turning on each other, fighting over resources and safe zones. Tribunal Master Kolvex, who had laughed so heartily at humanity's withdrawal, now sat in the emergency council session with his head bowed in defeat. "We have lost 63 worlds," he reported. "Casualty estimates now exceed 12 trillion. Our military has been reduced to 30% of operational strength. At current rates, the swarm will reach Velthor Prime in 6 months." The chamber was silent. No one laughed now. No one mocked. The aliens who had ruled the galaxy for millennia were facing their own annihilation. "There is one option," Vexter said quietly. "One possibility we have not pursued." Everyone knew what he meant. For days, the council had debated in circles, pride fighting against desperation. But with the swarm consuming another world every 48 hours, pride had become a luxury they could no longer afford. Several council members said simultaneously. "They abandoned us," Nimra insisted, her insectoid features rigid with anger. "They retreated behind their wall and left us to our fate. Why would they help now?" Vexter's bioluminescence dimmed. "Because if the swarm consumes us, they will eventually turn to human space. Because despite our treatment of them, humans have shown themselves to be surprisingly compassionate. Because we have no other choice." The vote was close, but desperation won. The message was crafted carefully, though Vexter could not entirely suppress his natural arrogance. He spoke of humanity's opportunity to assist the Concordat, of future considerations, and the chance to rejoin galactic civilization. Even in his plea for help, he could not quite treat humans as equals. The response came 2 days later. Not from a diplomat, but from Admiral Dejung himself. Vexter watched the transmission with a sinking feeling of dread. Dejung looked older than he had 3 years ago, his hair touched with gray. But his eyes were hard, unforgiving. "Chancellor Vexter, humanity has received your transmission. We have observed the Concordat's struggle with interest. However, we have no treaties with your government, no obligations to your people, and no reason to expend human lives for species who mocked us and drove us away. You called us weak. You laughed at our departure. You predicted we would come begging to return." The Admiral paused, and Vexter felt something he had not experienced in centuries: genuine fear. "We are not begging," Darjon continued. "We are thriving. What happens in Concordat space is no longer our concern. You are on your own. Good luck, Chancellor. You will need it." The transmission ended. Vexter sat in stunned silence. Around him, the council erupted in panic and rage. They had expected humanity to leap at the chance to prove themselves. They had expected gratitude for the opportunity. Instead, they received only cold indifference. A second transmission followed, this one from Ambassador Hiram. But she was no longer an ambassador. The title beneath her image read Prime Minister of the United Human Government. Her message was more diplomatic but no less devastating. The Concordat Council made its position clear 3 years ago. Humanity was inferior, unwelcome, and unworthy of equal partnership. We accepted your judgment and withdrew. You celebrated our departure. You mocked our decision. You wished us gone, and we obliged. What happens beyond the Perseus arm is human business. What happens in Concordat space is yours. We wish you good fortune in your struggles." She paused, and for a moment something like regret crossed her face. If the Concordat had approached us as equals, if you had asked for alliance rather than demanding submission, the situation might be different. But you did not. You do not get to treat us as inferior beings and then expect us to die saving you. That is not how respect works. Goodbye, Chancellor. The council chamber descended into chaos. Some demanded they send another message, offer more concessions. Others wanted to threaten human territory, to force their cooperation. But Kralvok shut down that idea immediately. We know nothing of human capabilities, he said. They have been isolated for 3 years, free to develop without our oversight or limitations. For all we know, they could have military strength that dwarfs our own. Threatening them would be suicide. Vexter sat alone in his chambers that night, watching news feeds from across Concordat space. Another world had gone silent. The swarm was accelerating. In desperation, he composed one final message to human space. This time, there was no arrogance, no demands, no assumptions of superiority. He knelt before the camera, his proud frame bent in supplication. Humans, I beg you. Not for myself, not for the Concordat that wronged you, but for the trillions of innocent people who will die if you do not act. I apologize for our treatment of you. I apologize for our arrogance. I offer complete equality. I offer anything you want, please. Help us. He sent the message and waited. For 3 days there was no response. The swarm advanced on Velthira Prime. Evacuation fleets prepared for what seemed like the inevitable end of Concordat civilization. And then, something appeared on the sensors. The sensor technician stared at his display in disbelief, running the scan 3 more times to confirm what he was seeing. War Master, something just emerged from FTL between us and the swarm. Kralvox moved to the sensor station, his massive form surprisingly quick. The Concordat defense fleet, what remained of it, hung in orbit around Velthera Prime, preparing for a last desperate stand. The swarm was hours away, its massive bioships clearly visible on long-range scans. But now, something else had appeared. Identify them, Kralvox ordered. The technician's voice shook. Sir, they are human vessels. Hundreds of them. On every ship in the Concordat fleet, on every station around Velthora Prime, the S. Shocked realization rippled through millions of minds. Humanity had come. Against all expectation, despite every reason to stay away, they had come. Fleet Marshal Sangwoo stood on the bridge of the flagship Seoul, Eternal, watching the tactical display with calm satisfaction. His fleet had crossed the Perseus Arm boundary in absolute secrecy, using FTL systems the Concordat did not know existed. They had arrived in perfect formation. 400 capital ships arranged in a defensive wall between the swarm and the Concordat homeworld. Open a channel to all Concordat frequencies, Sangwoo ordered. Let them hear this clearly. Throughout Concordat space, his message rang out. This is Fleet Marshal Sangwoo of the United Human Navy. Humanity has not come to save the Concordat. We have no treaties with you. We owe you nothing. However, the Devourer swarm threatens the stability of this entire galactic arm, and that includes human interests. We will eliminate this threat. When we are finished, we will return to our territory. The Concordat will not contact us again. Is that understood? Vexter, watching from his command ship, felt tears form in his eyes. He activated a com channel. Marshal Sangwoo, we understand. Thank you. Thank you for savior gratitude, Sangwoo interrupted coldly. Move your ships out of the engagement zone. We will handle this. The human fleet advanced, and the Concordat forces finally saw what humanity had become in 3 years of isolation. The ships were massive, their hulls gleaming with materials that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. They moved with impossible grace, accelerating and maneuvering in ways that violated the known laws of physics. Their energy signatures made Concordat sensors scream warnings about power levels that should not be possible. Captain Jiwoo commanded the battlecruiser Seoul's Vengeance from the bridge, her hands steady on the controls despite the magnitude of what was about to happen. She had been a freighter captain once, hauling cargo between peaceful worlds. Now she commanded a warship that could reduce planets to ash. The universe had changed. Humanity had changed. Weapons powered and ready, Captain, her tactical officer reported. Dark matter lances charged to full capacity. Quantum missiles locked on primary targets. Shield generators at maximum. You studied the swarm fleet ahead. Thousands of bioships, each pulsing with organic life, each adapted to resist every weapon the Concordat had thrown at them. They were massive, powerful, and terrifying. and they were about to learn why humanity had spent 3 years preparing for war. All ships, she transmitted to her squadron. Remember your training. These things adapt, but we adapt faster. Hit them hard, hit them fast, and do not give them time to adjust. For Earth. For every human who died building these ships. Show them what we are. The swarm detected the human fleet and moved to engage. Their bioships were designed for consumption and conquest, evolved through 1,000,000 battles across countless worlds. They had never been stopped, never been defeated. They approached the human fleet with the confidence of an apex predator that had never met its match. They were wrong. The battle began when the Soul's Vengeance fired its main dark matter lance. The weapon released a beam of impossible darkness, matter that should not exist in normal space. Contained and directed by technology the Concordat had considered fantasy. The beam struck a swarm bioship that was 3 kilometers long and erased it from existence. No explosion. No debris. Simply gone, as if it had never been. Across the human fleet, similar weapons fired. Dark matter lances, quantum disruptors, gravitational implosion devices, humanity unleashed technologies they had developed in secret, free from Concordat, oversight, and limitation. Swarm ships died by the dozens in the first minute of combat. The Hive Matriarch. The ancient intelligence controlling the swarm had consumed 1,000 species across 10,000 years. It had faced every weapon, every tactic, every desperate attempt at resistance. It began to adapt, just as it always had. Bioships grew new armor that reflected energy weapons, shields that dispersed kinetic strikes, jamming systems to counter electronic warfare, and the human ships changed their tactics instantly. AI networks analyzed the adaptations in real time, coordinated responses across hundreds of vessels, and deployed countermeasures before the swarm could complete its evolution. It was an arms race occurring at the speed of thought, and for the first time in its existence. The Hive Matriarch was losing. Dr. Boyoung coordinated the scientific analysis from the fleet command ship. Her team processing data from the battle faster than any organic mind could follow. The swarm is attempting to adapt to our dark matter weapons, she reported to Sangwoo. Switching to quantum disruption in sectors 4 through 7. Deploying gravitational mines in sectors 8 through 12. Maintaining dark matter bombardment in all other zones. The human fleet moved like a single organism, ships coordinating with precision that seemed telepathic. They surrounded swarm elements, cut off reinforcements, and systematically destroyed bioships before they could communicate their adaptations to the rest of the fleet. It was not just superior technology. It was superior strategy, superior coordination, superior everything. Gu watched her squadron tear through a cluster of swarm bioships like they were paper targets. Her gunners worked with mechanical precision, each shot calculated by AI and executed with perfect accuracy. A swarm bioship tried to ram her vessel, adapting tentacles reaching for her hull. She rolled her ship impossibly fast, fired a quantum missile at point-blank range, and watched the bioship phase out of existence. The Concordat forces watched in stunned silence. Their military commanders, who had fought the swarm for months and lost, saw the human fleet achieve in hours what they had failed to do in all that time. The swarm was not just being defeated, it was being annihilated. The Hive Matriarch, feeling fear for the first time in its ancient existence, attempted to retreat. The remaining bioships began breaking off from combat, trying to escape into FTL. Sangwoo had anticipated this. Deploy interdiction fields, he ordered. Nothing escapes. Across the battle space, human ships activated gravity wells that prevented FTL travel. The swarm was trapped, and the human fleet showed no mercy. They hunted down every bioship, every spawning pod, every fragment of the hive. 18 hours after the battle began, the devourer swarms ceased to exist. Vexter watched the final swarm bioship explode in silence. The threat that had brought the Concordat to its knees, that had killed trillions and destroyed worlds, was simply gone. And the human fleet had not lost a single ship. Sangwoo's final transmission came directly to Vexter's personal channel. Chancellor, the swarm has been eliminated. In return for our intervention, Humanity claims salvage rights to all swarm remains and 3 former Concordat sectors adjacent to our territory. These sectors will be evacuated within 60 days. These terms are not negotiable. Vexthor wanted to argue to negotiate. Those sectors contain dozens of worlds, trillions of people. But he looked at the human fleet, at the power they had displayed, at the cold efficiency with which they had destroyed an enemy that had seemed unstoppable. Additionally, Songwu continued, the Concordat is forbidden from entering human space for 50 standard years. If you violate this agreement, if you send even a single probe across our border, you will discover why the swarm should have terrified you less than we do. Do we have an understanding, Chancellor? Vexthor's bioluminescence flickered with patterns of submission. We understand, Marshal. Your terms are accepted. And thank you. Despite everything, thank you for saving us. Songwu's expression did not soften. We did not do this for you. Remember that. Humanity acts in its own interests. Farewell, Chancellor. We will not meet again. The human fleet began collecting the swarm remains, using technology that made the massive biomass simply vanish into dimensional storage. Within hours, they jumped back to human space, leaving the Concordat to rebuild from the ashes of their civilization. In the aftermath, as Vexthor surveyed the damage and began the impossible task of reconstruction, he understood the horrible irony. The Concordat had driven humanity away thinking they were weak. In doing so, they had freed humanity to become the most powerful force in the galaxy. And when that power had been needed, humanity had helped not out of friendship or alliance, but purely because the alternative was inconvenient. A new phrase began spreading through Concordat languages in the months that followed. Never mock a Terran's departure. You may not survive their return. 50 years later, when the Concordat finally sent a delegation to human space, approaching with humility and respect, they found an empire that spanned hundreds of systems. The humans received them politely but coolly. The past was not forgotten, but perhaps the humans suggested it might someday be forgiven.